What's freaking cool? All right. Okay.
She has like little chairs and like in her master bedroom, and then we turn on the light.
So here's kind of an example of that Mantegna painting that we talked about briefly. All right, Triumph of the Bernini family. This is another example of a Di Sotto in Su. And also a naturalist painter, because we can kind of see that dramatic lighting from above, opening up. Very well lit here. Everything kind of gets darker as it gets further away. What this is supposed to really kind of signify is this idea, or the basis behind a lot of these ceiling paintings is really to kind of trademark a particular family or something like that. They want to be able to last forever. And so by painting on a ceiling, that's one way of achieving that. So the Barberini family, along with the Pope at the time, and we'd have to look up who the Pope is. I think it's like Pope Urban the 6th or something like that. It's in your book. Commissions to have a painting done at the Bernini, at the Palazzo della Barberini, in order to kind of glorify the Barberini family. And so what we have here is we have kind of the heavens opening, and immortality is heading towards this with this kind of crown of stars to kind of signify the idea of immortality, over to these laurel leaves and bees. So there's bees and laurel leaves, and these are predominant symbols associated with the Barberini family. Remember, talked about how we saw bees on the baldacchino, right, that we looked at? So same thing. So incorporating this idea of symbolism within the piece. And let's end at that. All right, Spain. Moving right along. If we can get to switch over. Okay. Spanish Baroque, right? We really haven't dealt with Spain a whole lot. We talked about El Greco a little bit. So now, stop messing with me. So now we're gonna get with now we're gonna get into some major Spanish artists. Why are you misbehaving? Okay. Our biggest, most prominent Spanish artist is going to be Velázquez, but we're going to look at a few before we look at Velázquez because there's actually a few that are talked about in your book, but the most noteworthy or the most well-known during this period of time would be Velázquez himself. But Ribera is one of our kind of early Spanish Baroque artists. Now, what you want to remember is Spain at this point is really involved in this idea of the Counter-Reformation. I mean, they want to uphold the Catholic Church. They took it upon themselves to be the protector of the faith in a lot of ways. So there's a lot of like battling that goes against England. Ultimately, you know, your Spanish Armada is a bunch of ships that sailed to England for this big like naval battle that sadly Spain loses. A little historical note, anybody who's Irish with really black hair has Spanish blood because their ships ran aground in Ireland and the Irish took them in because they were Catholic. All right, take them in and they get to live and they, you know, make babies. And of course, black hair is a stronger dominant than red or blonde hair. So that's why Bono's part Spanish, just saying. All right, so a little bit of a biology lesson in that one. But again, what the Spanish wanted to do with a lot of their religious works is to kind of discuss this idea of the martyrdom of the saints. And so Ribera did a lot of works that revolved around the process in which the saint is being martyred. And we've seen that before, right? We saw Caravaggio address that with the martyrdom of Saint Peter, or even the conversion with Saint Paul, right? And so we kind of get this again, this idea, or this very kind of dramatic moment with a lot of these artists, and most of them are going to be naturalists in their style. Playing with this idea of a foreshortened figure. Martyrdom of Saint Bartholomew. Ribera did a lot of martyrdom pieces, and that really was kind of to just try and address this idea of what Protestants didn't like about this kind of communion of saints. And so really a lot of people thought, well, you know, they really suffered. They suffered a lot. I mean, not to kind of take away from the suffering of Christ or even equal it, but to use it as an example of what they did for their faith, for their belief, for their love of God. Why? One's a close-up.
Oh, there's a close-up? Oh. Because there's 2 different years.
And go back.
What?
Go back.
That's an ear, and that's an ear.
No. Go back a slide.
What?
Oh, there we go. That's also Martyrdom of St. Bartholomew.
Yeah.
Same guy. So
First one.
You did 2.
Yes. Okay, I see what you're getting at.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about the 2 here. I was like, what?
No.
So confused. And you can kind of see that kind of the distortion of the body, or this kind of like twisting and winding of the body. The lack of that idealization of the body that you would get from your classicist painters. We're just sailing through just because we need to. Read your book. But you can really see where they're coming from. They saw what Caravaggio was doing and really took it and ran with it. Now this is more along the idea of even that kind of classicist style. It still has that dramatic lighting effect, but kind of a little bit more along the lines of a classicist technique. So you could have seen that, kind of maybe played with it. And a lot of these works are commissioned by, especially works like these, are commissioned. So if someone's saying, I want a painting like this, and I want it done like that, and Ribera wants to make money, he'll do it.
Oh, geez.
Boy with a club foot. Zurbarán is another one who, again, utilizes this idea of dramatic lighting. Here, the image of Saint Serapion, what he's doing is he's calling on this idea of how, or it's rumored how, this particular individual was killed in essentially back in trying to convert Muslims. So during the Holy Wars, right? He's tied to a tree and his head he's decapitated. So what Zurbarán does here is he really makes it very dark, right? All the emphasis is on the figure itself, so much so that you can really barely see the trees that he is bound to. And it's really bad slide, so it's really kind of hard to see. But you can even see the kind of the cutting of the neck here as well. Still life. Now, if still lifes are supposed to mean things, what could we gather from this particular still life?
Lemon and peach tea.
Lemon and peach tea, not quite.
Life is sweet.
Life is sweet. That's true, Ange. Are we looking at someone who has money or no money?
Money.
Why would we say that?